From Paris to Brest and then back again, the famous cycling race that sparked the creation of this equally famous pastry, the Paris-Brest pastry. This is the ultimate building on recipes. Since we are implementing 2 of the recipes from my last video, but this time we're adding in one key element, the praline paste that we'll be adding to our mousseline cream for the filling of this amazing pastry. So where do we start? First, we're going to be making this praline paste. Now, what is a praline paste versus just a hazelnut butter? Pralines would be a caramelized sugar and nut mixture. Basically, it's like a brittle. If you've ever made a nut brittle before, that's where we're gonna start with this recipe. Sometimes a combination of hazelnut and almonds. Now, I have been having an unbelievable time finding hazelnuts, so I actually did a mixture of almonds and Brazil nuts because to me the Brazil nut was probably the closest to a hazelnut because I can't find hazelnuts anywhere and I tried 4 different stores. So we're going to go ahead and get this right to the stove so we can get this brittle cooking, and then we're going to grind it in the food processor down to a paste, and then we're going to roll right into the other 2 recipes. So let's get started with this praline first. So the first thing that we're doing is combining the sugar with the corn syrup, a pinch of salt, and the water, and we're going to bring that up to a rolling boil. Sometimes I do like to put a lid on that, and any of the sugar that might be sticking to the sides of the pot, the steam's going to dissolve that, and that way you're going to avoid any severe crystallization. So we're going to get that up to a rolling boil. You are going to need an instant read thermometer for this project because we do have to cook this sugar to a precise temperature of 320 degrees. Working with caramelized sugar is really dangerous. I can never stress enough how you have to be really super careful when you are cooking sugar to such high temperatures. So really just do this carefully with no kids or animals around to distract you, and never walk away from it while it's on the stove. This can go from light amber to absolute smoked out kitchen in a matter of seconds. So really keep your eye on this, and this is where the instant read thermometer is going to come in really handy. So you can see the color is turning that light amber. We are approaching 320. So I'm going to remove this from the heat as soon as it gets to 320. And then with a wooden spoon, we're going to stir in the other ingredients and then pour it immediately onto the silicone mat. All right, there we go. Now this is going to continue to cook and darken in color. So in goes the vegan butter and the baking soda. Now you will notice because of the baking soda and of course the butter, it is going to bubble up. So you want to make sure that the pot you're working with is big enough to accommodate the fluffing of all of this. Now some people will cook their nuts from the start with the sugar. I don't really love to do it that way because I feel like, especially the sliced almonds, it's such a delicate nut and they could have a tendency to get kind of like burnt in there. So I like to add it in at the end. It's so hot, this temperature is over 300 degrees, that these nuts are getting sufficiently toasted immediately as they go into that super hot syrup. To your silicone mat, you're just going to kind of spread that out. Now this part of the recipe can be made well in advance. I mean, this stuff can stay for a month at least. So you can do this ahead of time, and this actual recipe makes way more than what we're going to be needing for our creme mousseline. So I made extra because I'm going to use this probably for something else. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to make such a super small recipe of something like this. And whatever you don't use, you can nibble on a hazelnut praline brittle. So it's been about an hour and our nut brittle is perfectly cooled, and we're going to just go ahead and put that into the food processor, break it up, let it spin for about 3 minutes until it gets to sort of like a paste consistency. It should start to resemble like a thick nut butter. So this is looking really good. This is what it should look like after about 3 to 5 minutes. It looks like a thick nut butter. So I don't think I finished my thought before. I often don't finish my thoughts when I'm doing these live stream videos. I was saying in the beginning, so what is the difference between a praline and just a straight up nut butter? The praline is where you're cooking the nuts with a caramelized sugar syrup, turning it into more of a brittle, which then we pulverize to the paste here. So this is a very sweet, like a very sweet nut butter. So the question is going to be, well, can I just forego this entire recipe altogether? Yeah, you can use a nut butter. Just don't tell anybody that I told you that. So now moving on to the second recipe in this epic project, I've got the plant milk, a little bit of sugar and some salt, and some vegan butter are going into this sauce pot to make the vegan pate choux recipe. Now, I just showed you guys at length how to make the vegan pate choux for cream puffs and eclairs, so I'm not going to get into explaining every single detail of that. I urge you to go ahead and watch that video from start to finish to get all of the really important information about the ingredients and how to actually make that recipe. So I'm going to kind of speed through this one here right now. So all we're doing is combining the plant milk with that sugar, pinch of salt, vegan butter. We're going to get that up to a rolling boil. And then all of the dry ingredients go in, and that would be the all-purpose flour, the baking powder, the methocel. I've got a little bit of xanthan gum in there, as well as chickpea flour. And again, I explained all of those ingredients 100% clarity in the full-length video tutorial for how to make vegan pate choux, so definitely go ahead and watch that video. Stir it together. It's going to come together pretty quickly into like a really tight ball of sticky looking dough, and then transfer that to the mixer bowl, where we then add in our egg replacer mixture, just a little bit at a time. You're going to see that the dough sort of splits apart after each addition, and then it'll mix back together smooth, and then you'll add just a little bit more. Let it sort of mix out. You're going to continue doing that until all of the egg replacer mixture is incorporated. So once that all gets incorporated, we're going to just pipe it out into the special signature shape of a Paris Brest pastry. I do have my oven preheating to 475 degrees Fahrenheit. If you do have a convection oven setting, definitely use that for a recipe like pate choux. So into our pastry bag, the pate choux dough goes. I only have a coupler here. I don't find it necessary to use a tip to pipe this. And as you see here, I have my parchment paper with some circles drawn on. Now I took my 4-inch little cheesecake pan and just traced out 4-inch diameters of rings to use as sort of a guide, because I'm making individual ones. If you wanted to make one whole large Paris Brest pastry, then you would just take probably a 9-inch cake pan and trace out a circle for a 9-inch instead. The whole history of the Paris Brest pastry is that the pate choux dough is in the shape of the wheel of the bicycle. As I mentioned, this was the famous race from Paris to Brest and then back again. And so you're going to be piping an outer ring and then an inner ring. And then you're going to pipe a third ring on top of both of those. And this is going to bake into the perfect shape of a bicycle tire. Fatter on the middle and skinnier as it goes towards the edges and the center. So just go ahead and pipe using your ring as a guide. My oven is preheating to 475 degrees already. You want to be sure that your oven is ready after you've piped your pastry. We're going to be brushing the tops of this with a little bit of aquafaba and then some sliced almonds to go on top. Now, I wasn't really sure if I was going to get 4 or 6 out of this recipe, and it looks like I'm going to get 5, so I was right on with my prediction. So whoever thought that making a cake recipe and a filling and an icing for a traditional layer cake was a lot of work. Step into the world of classical French pastry and you will think that making a layer cake is a breeze compared to all of the steps and the little techniques that you need to know about making perfect French pastry. But don't worry, stick with me and I will show you the best and easiest way to do all of those things. So let's go ahead and get these into the preheated 475 degree Fahrenheit oven. Let them bake up and then we will prepare the third and final recipe for this Paris Brest pastry, which is the hazelnut creme mousseline. So just take a look at these beautiful pastries. They still do have to cool before I can split them, but here you go. Now the almonds get a little bit too toasty at such a high temperature in the oven. I mean, it's not too terrible actually, but at any rate, let's go ahead and let these cool all the way before we split them. And in the meantime, the custard is completely cooled and we're going to make the hazelnut creme mousseline. So we've already made custard several different times for lots of different recipes that I've showed you. So this is my basic custard base and I'm pouring it out onto a sheet pan because I want it to cool pretty quickly so that I can start incorporating it into my cream mousseline, which is essentially like a custard-based buttercream, only I'm not using the full amount of butter that you would use if you were making a traditional custard-based buttercream. So I've got my softened vegan butter in the mixer bowl with that praline paste, and I'm just gonna whip that together until it's smoothed out consistency. Then the custard is fully cooled. I'm going to add that little by little while whipping. And you are going to have the most silky, buttery, rich hazelnut creme mousseline ever, and that is going to be the filling for these beautiful Paris Brest pastries. So here is our finished praline creme mousseline, and it is quite soft because I did just mix it. So it pipes much better if you refrigerate it for several hours to let the butter sort of re-solidify, and it'll pipe much stiffer if you let it refrigerate, which is what I have here. I did have one that I made yesterday, so this one is definitely more firm. But we are at the end of this beautiful Paris Brest pastry tutorial. I've already sliced off the tops of the bicycle wheel, so let's just leave that aside. As you see, we've got this beautiful pâte choux base, and just go ahead and pipe that hazelnut cream right into the center. So this is your prize after finishing that 1,200-mile bike race from Paris to Brest and then back to Paris again. The really good thing though about this is that we didn't even have to drive our bicycles. We just went straight for the pastry. Now that's my kind of win. With just a sprinkling of powdered sugar to top this off. Ooh, I can't wait to dig into this. So I hope you guys are going to really want to make this recipe. I know it's a lot of steps to get to the final, but let me tell you, this Classic Cakes Veganized Series is well worth the effort. I mean, these desserts are just, you've never tasted anything like this before in your life, I promise you that. The perfection that is authentic pastry preparation is really unmatched. So I hope that you'll try your hand at least one of these recipes, if not all. And thanks so much for watching my Classic Cakes Veganized Series. All the recipes as usual at Gretchen'sVeganBakery.com. And a real quick shout out as usual to all my patrons on Patreon and my pals in PayPal who are supporting this channel and making all of this possible. These folks are so generous every month and donating as little as a cup of coffee a month, and some of them much, much more than that. And I really do appreciate all of you so much. If you think you can help support the channel for as little as a cup of coffee a month, click the links below to find out how. All right, everyone, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode in the Classic Cakes Veganized series. And until then, happy vegan baking. Bye for now.